Good morning, everybody, and welcome to all who are online. Just a note, our counterparts in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature are running a little bit late, so we'll get started once they've joined. We are currently live, and just some house rules. Kindly keep yourself muted and your video off until you are called on to speak. Also, kindly raise your hand and indicate whether you have a question at the appropriate time. Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. We do have a smaller house today. Unfortunately, some of our colleagues from the Gauteng Provincial Legislature have had to urgently fly back to attend to a matter. And so we are joined by some of the staff from the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. Welcome. I'll just move on to introductions. Let me start with Member Nkondlo.
Morning, colleagues. My name is Nomi Nkondla. I'm a member of the committee. Thanks.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Tabos Kosana. I'm the Senior Committee Coordinator for the committee, Chair, and I'd like to apologize on behalf of members, and I'm sure you'd have been informed of this already, with respect to their absence towards this particular meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Lebogang Mampi. I am the committee coordinator responsible for agriculture, rural development and environment. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, honorable members, as well as colleagues. I'm Dr. Anthony Twarelo Malapane. I'm the researcher for the committee. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Lizette Kluter, Senior Procedural Officer, Committees.
Good morning, Zaida Adams, Procedural Officer for the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism.
I will recognize you in a moment. I just want to recognize those online, starting with Candice.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Candice Morris, ICT Assistant.
Thank you, Candice. One more introduction inside the House.
Good morning, members. Masentle Motsapi, Committee Assistant.
Yep. Member Mackenzie, I haven't forgotten about you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, please, Chair. And just on a note, we can't see anything in the House, so the cameras in the House is not on. But my name is Ricardo Mackenzie, a member of this committee and the Chairperson of Transport and Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you, ICT. I have noted and will address it. I see Isaac.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Isaac Smith from the Provincial Treasury, responsible for supply chain and asset management.
Thank you. I see Jalinda.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Jalinda Gantana from the Provincial Treasury, Head of Governance and Asset Management.
Thank you. Nadia Ibrahim.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'm Nadia Ibrahim, Provincial Treasury, Provincial Government, Supply Chain Management.
Thank you. And last but not least, HOD.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, colleagues. David Savage, Head Official of the Provincial Treasury.
Thank you very much, HOD. So now that we've concluded our introductions, I just want to note apologies. We have received apologies from Member Brinkcase and of course noted from the GPL delegation. We'll now move, if there are no further apologies, we'll now move to the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And let me start by giving a warm welcome to the Western Cape from our colleagues from Gauteng. Great to have the visit, and we are particularly delighted that you're going to be joining us on this visit to the Procurement Client Centre this morning. Jalinda Gantana will lead the presentation from our side online. They are already at the client centre at Century City awaiting your arrival. I think just from my side, before we start out the presentation, just a few very quick remarks. The first is that, I really see the Procurement Client Centre as the place where our supply chain management strategy for the province comes together and focuses on a key asset that we have in the province, which is our supplier community themselves. It allows us to invest in supporting and building that supplier base for the province and to really strengthen practical partnerships and make sure that we are able to access competitive markets for when we are procuring goods and services. And you'll see exactly those themes, I think, come up again and again when in a very practical sense in how we try and engage and the services we try and provide to our suppliers through that. I think also to note that our approach with the Procurement Client Centre is to always remain a work in progress rather than a finished product. So we are not done yet in terms of where our ambitions with how we're going to evolve the Procurement Client Centre. The supply chain environment in the public sector is an evolving environment. It may sometimes do so quite slowly, but as the Western Cape Treasury, we try and stay in the lead of that evolution. So we're tremendously proud of what the Procurement Client Centre represents, not just now, but going forward in terms of the directions that we're trying to drive supply chain management or public procurement in the Western Cape and in the public sector as a whole. I must say I am personally tremendously proud of the leadership shown by the team, my management team in this respect, as well as the commitment and the caliber of all of the officials that you're going to be meeting today at the Procurement Client Centre. It gives me great pride when suppliers get hold of me directly to note just the quality of service they've received, the rapidity of responses they received when they are facing challenges or frustrations in aspects of public procurement. And I can say very proudly that we get quite a few positive reports. I personally get those. So I'm always delighted to get that sort of feedback that we're making the right choices and building the right systems that support our suppliers in the Western Cape. But with that, let me hand over to Jalinda and the team to take you through the presentation.
Thank you, HOD. Whilst, through you, Chair, whilst Nadia is putting up the presentation, maybe just to echo the sentiments, the Procurement Client Centre is a one-stop shop for us, and it is really, from a Provincial Treasury point of view, the face of Western Cape government. It's the place where we assist departments, municipalities, as well as suppliers come together within the space. We're building capability for value-adding purchasing. It deals with capacitation and development, and Nadia is going to expand in terms of the technology enablement and what we're doing within that space to make it easier for suppliers to engage with Western Cape government. So it is an exciting space. Once you come and you land here, it's an energetic team. And they are really driving this with the necessary vigor and energy to ensure that we do provide the best of support to our clients in general. So Nadia, will you put this on slideshow?
Can you see it now, Jalinda?
I can see it, but it's not showing. Can you do slideshow? Yes.
Okay, let me just shift it around a little bit. That better?
Okay, you can go.
All right. So I think thank you for the opportunity. I think the HOD and Jalinda have actually placed position the presentation in the right platform, and it gives me great pleasure to do this presentation this morning. So basically, we can't consider the Procurement Client Center without underpinning it with the Provincial Treasury vision and mission statement, where we speak about a responsive and inclusive Treasury that enables positive change in the lives of the citizen, with our mission being the promotion of cohesion and citizen centricity, building capacity in the public sector by being adaptive, innovative, and supportive, as well as integrated management and partnerships that enable the delivery of quality services in a sustainable manner. And the Procurement Client Center resonates both this mission, vision, and mission statement. Then in terms of the Procurement Client Center, we in 2019 opened what we call the then walk-in Client Center to ensure a face-to-face contact and support with Western Cape government procurement clients in respect of any procurement-related issue. The intent was to have a more broader context, not just with the supply community and the public, but also to our officials as clients in terms of the Provincial Treasury providing that level of service. So at the inception level, the supply management services included supplier registrations, maintenance of profiles on the CSD, Western Cape Evidence Bank, which is a supplier database that is linked to the National Central Supplier Database, and then our e-procurement system for quotations, the less formal quote.
Nadia, the presentation slides are not moving.
Sorry, my apologies. All right, so this is the slide on the Treasury vision and mission statement, and what I've already mentioned, I won't repeat. And then basically the inception. Okay, Isaac has come through my office saying the slides are not moving. Okay, I fixed it, Isaac. All right, thank you for that, for your patience, Chair. Then just in terms of the launch, and I think what we drive, I think for now, it's really the tech layer and the support that we provide to our supplier community, on a one-on-one basis via the Client Center. So the official launch and naming of the Procurement Client Center took place on the 31st of May, 2021. Just in terms of a long-term business model canvas, the value proposition that we put through in our service charter is a first point of contact for any client to do business with government or query resolution relating to government procurement processes. This is underpinned by the Batopele principles, and the range of services include supplier development, technology enablement, support programs for departments, municipalities, and suppliers, as well as query and complaints handling. Our engagement channels include telephony, face-to-face contact, email, as well as correspondence, social media, perception surveys, print media, digital platforms, as well as looking at MS Teams engagements or Zoom interventions, as well as public engagements via roadshows, etc. Our customers, I've mentioned in the first opening statement on the value proposition, but they also include the public who want to ask any question on procurement, as well as oversight bodies that come to us on a range of questions relating to the Western Cape government tenders, as well as the information on our systems, etc., that may be related to anything that we do around procurement in the Western Cape government. And then any other organ of state that also comes to us with either wanting to know more or looking at partnerships or wanting support. Our partners, firstly, we do have an outsource model that builds in, especially on the registration process. It's very administrative functions, and the Treasury or the unit itself is not capacitated for that. So we insource the services from an admin perspective, as well as our departments and municipalities who also co-partner with us. And there are instances where some of our departmental officials come in and sit in at the Client Center, particularly if there are certain things happening in the province that they want to mainstream with the supplier community. And we do get that partnerships, especially from the Departments of Health and Transport and Public Works, where there are specific commodity-specific interventions that they're working with. And then the National Treasury, a key partner, particularly with the interfaces around the central supplier database that then interfaces with our evidence bank and the e-procurement system. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. So when we look at query resolution or complaints, there's always aspects around competition as well as anti-competitive behavior. And we need to build that kind of, follow through with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to be able to assist, and give the right kind of support where required. And then SARS, as well as the Construction Industry Development Board and any other sector-specific body that regulates the various industries that we purchase in from a government perspective. Some of our risk factors, I think, that we've experienced over time would be around buy-in and how do our various stakeholders, particularly on the external front, tap into this process and whether or not they would, be more amenable to coming into the client center. And that's been a journey. I think we're getting more positive feedback as we go along. I think at the beginning, it is about a shift because previously a consultant dealt with it. And now they were getting face-to-face engagements. But I think it's been a very positive journey in that our suppliers want to see government at the end of the line. And I think the shift from moving away from a consultant has been a good one in where we actually dealing with the management of the facility as well as the functions from a Treasury perspective. Funding is always an issue in the cost containment environment. You can do a lot more. Build in a lot of, all the bells and whistles. I think it's very lean and mean in terms of how we've pulled the facility together. And so doing more often requires more funding, but we try to do the best with what we have at this point in time. Staff turnover, I think it's something that we critically sit with. Particularly in this unit, where our staff are very marketable, they get snapped up across. So you're getting a huge churn in terms of keeping the right skill sets here all the time. And it's things that we're working on and how do we build that capacity and strengthen other means of actually looking at business continuity. The outsourced functions has always been a bugbear, and a number of questions, I think, even from this committee, are things that we're looking at and how do we then build that capability and linking back to the previous risk factor that I've actually mentioned. Accommodation, also an issue. You want to have a facility that's easily accessible, that's central, that most of our clients could actually get to, particularly on the face-to-face, engagements. However, we then augment this through the tech layer where we do MS Teams or Zooms, but we also do roadshows. So the team goes on to visit the districts and take the registration process to the communities, and we partner. We've just done one recently with the Khayelitsha, within the Khayelitsha area, in partnerships with the Department of Health and Transport and Public Works, as well as our team from the Provincial Treasury, going into the community via the assistance with the Khayelitsha Business Forum in dealing with our suppliers in this way. So we're trying to maximize the footprint. And so in saying that the Procurement Client Center is just not the physical accommodation that we have at Century City, but it's bigger and it's wider than that. And there's many mechanisms to actually broaden the reach on it. IT support, so we're dependent a lot of the times, particularly on the systems that we manage on IT support, and having a good relationship as well as partnerships and development or infrastructure becomes critical in the space. And that's not always been, it's been a challenge given a lot of the things that are linked up to it, including load shedding, which may sometimes hamper service delivery. Then the regulatory environment, I think a lot of the pushback from suppliers is about the regulatory environment and how they see it as hampering what they need to do. So that also means that we need to beef up. We need to be able to become more aware of how we can assist and how we could ease business continuity or the ease of doing business with the Western Cape government as seamlessly and as easily as possible. So the face of Western Cape government or the Treasury, when we engage, becomes quite critical in this environment, particularly when you're dealing with quite a severe regulatory environment that may also in some instances be challenged, or we have our recent court judgment as a legacy, and so it's a tough terrain to actually maneuver through. Our key resources are our systems. I've mentioned that the CSD, SEB, etc. But we are looking at different things like the National Treasury portals that looks at business opportunities, as well as our own frequently asked questions that we have on our webpage, and looking at AI capability and introducing chatbots so that it makes it easier for our suppliers or the public to actually engage and ask the right questions. A CRM or customer relationships management software to assist us to, and you'll see later why we do need a customer relations management software, because of the range of queries and influx of work that comes through. So you almost need something to create efficiency gains in the management. Video and voiceover capabilities, we've bought into that recently, and we're kind of making more information available through a video capability where suppliers can learn and go through information at their own pace, rather than at a formal session where you receive the information once off, or it's a flat presentation that you can't engage with, or you don't hear what the person has said in that regard. And so that's working very well for us in that regard. So just moving on to the intent, the Procurement Client Center has been intended as a one-stop shop, and we incrementally increasing or adding to how we're going to mainstream this broader vision. So it is about helping departments and municipalities as well as suppliers. It is about building capability for value-adding purchasing, as our HOD mentioned in his opening statements. And it's also about capacity building, and how do we then build the knowledge and the capability and the ability to purchase in a better way from a government perspective, but also from the supplier end. How do we take our suppliers with us on this journey to building the necessary skill set? And some of the partnerships include our sister department, the Department of Economic Development and Economic Opportunities. And then obviously technology enablement, that has been the forerunner at this point in the client center. So who are our clients? I mean, we have a varied range of clientele, and it's not just the suppliers, but we do engage at all three spheres in terms of looking at how do we support. I mean, doing CSD assistance is very much a National Treasury competence, but we cannot work in isolation with the National Treasury. So we do provide assistance and support even for their applications that interface or integrate within the procurement space, and various other, I've mentioned our other partners. Local government critical, because we're dealing with the same suppliers across, and suppliers see one government. They don't see different provinces or different spheres. When they do business in the Western Cape, they expect the same kind of requirements and meeting the same kind of aspects around the commodities that they purchase. Then the second layer of client engagement would be around supplier-buyer-supplier relationships between our departments, and how do we maneuver and manage that within a treasury space that almost creates the ease of doing business with our clients, which is our internal clients, our departments for non-public entities as well as municipalities. So what do we do? I spoke about the technology services, the e-procurement system, the service desk, so various query handling, advice and guidance, the learning aspects, also spoken to, complaints handling, so mediation, redress and remediation between our departmental clients or public entity clients or municipal clients with the supplier, and being able to kind of get the kind of understanding of how procurement works, because there are certain legal aspects around complaints handling and management, and where in the process you can intervene. So something that we're working on, and we're building the relationships with our departments, and how do we deal with supplier complaints more effectively. Service and information management. So some of the work that actually comes through from routine procurement and all of the technology layers, as well as the key learning, finds its way in how then do we indicate performance across to the public, and what does our public accountability then look like. So our service information management is about looking at how do we maximize on producing the information on what we do and how we do it for greater transparency. And some of the projects for now that actually deal with that is the procurement disclosure report that we started pushing out into the public space during COVID-19. And we're continuing with the journey to deal with a more deeper dive into displaying or demonstrating to the public on how we do business as the Western Cape government. So if a supplier wants to understand, how does your strategy work? What is your thinking when you approach the market? Why have you made certain decisions? We're starting to start from the beginning, which is our strategy, and slowly build on how then do we build on that information set so that our suppliers fully understand what is it that we want, and how do we then look at service delivery in a more meaningful manner. Other aspects is about efficiencies in process and procedure. So even with the client center, it's about booking tools, having perception survey requirements, and resource information management. And all of this is underpinned by our signed off, where our minister signs off on our standards that have been adopted via a service charter specifically for the PCC. Now, the Treasury has two service charters. One is where it's for our range of services that the Treasury does, but we have an additional one for the Procurement Client Center. Then just looking at an overlay between the SEM strategy in the province. So members will know we presented on this before. The SEM strategy is a four-pronged approach, and you'll find that even in our annual performance plan, we speak to a four-pronged approach that begins to focus on governance, which is the policy and control environment, capacitation and development, strategic procurement, as well as the technology layer. So what the slide really speaks to is, how does this then resonate with the supplier community? How do we bring in the suppliers that fits into this broader strategic focus? So from a governance level, it is about compliant suppliers who abide by the law and procurement rules. From a capacitation and development perspective, as well as client support, it is about then having a focus on responsive suppliers who know how to do business with government. From a strategic procurement level, it is about suppliers who deliver at the right time, at the right price, and at the right place, and to the right value. From a technologies perspective, it is about suppliers who are duly registered on the CSD, have supporting evidence on the SCB, and know how to engage with the e-procurement system. So this is a range of key focus areas that, in order to meet the focus that we're looking at, it is how then do we bring the client center home to the supplier to then give effect to the strategy. So in terms of what we do as core services, so now, for now, it is about how to do business with the Western Cape governments, and the starting point is about registering on the National Treasury Central Supplier Database that creates profiles for all suppliers. To that is attached what we call the Supplier Evidence Bank, and this is not a duplication of the national process. The national process creates a match of compliance requirements and a profile, whilst the evidence bank actually has the evidence that supports the claims that the suppliers are making on the central supplier database. It is intended as being a once-off submission of documents that are used across the 13 departments in the province each financial year. So for example, if a if a supplier needed to submit their conflict of interest documents, their restriction or indication that they have not been collusive, as well as that they have not, don't have any criminal offenses, etc. There are four governance or three governance documents that they would in the norm submit for every tender process that they engage in, including quotations above a value of 2,000 Rand. What we have done in the Western Cape is to consolidate those three documents, and it's stored once off. So you have one document that speaks to all procurement that any department would engage with, and that's the evidence support in terms of reducing red tape in the province. And then obviously that interfaces with the e-procurement system. So a line of governance into business requirements in terms of inviting quotations, evaluating them, and ensuring that you have done the necessary due diligence to get to the supplier that you want to do business with. And then to get to know the tender procedures, we look at competitive bidding and quotations and formal bidding. So the suppliers must be able to understand that. They need to ensure tax compliance with SARS, and this is built into the CSD, but also the completion of BE affidavits for startup or BE certification as they become more compliant with BE requirements. And then the completion of their claim points where they claim BE preference points. I spoke to the declaration of interest form, which is the WCBD4, which then consolidates the three standard bidding documents. This becomes a compulsory requirement in order for any supplier to do business with any government institution. The adherence to industry-specific requirements, these are also built into our tech requirements so that we can then keep a handle on some of the more industry-specific requirements that may come up with any tender requirements. And then there's requirements around adherence to special conditions, bid specifications, as well as functionality that is being advertised. And then in addition, the compliance to local content and production where applicable in terms of designated sectors. So this is just a map that shows you some of the work that happens within the client center, particularly for the three systems that I've mentioned. So you'll see in the two smaller circles on the left, the CSD and the Western Cape Evidence Bank that feeds into the e-procurement system. And what you would see, what the client center manages is really the registration, which is online self-registration on the CSD, and then looking at streamlining and activation of the process within the Western Cape Evidence Bank so that the suppliers can then do business with the Western Cape with ease. So the question often asked is, why must they register? So it is a compulsory requirement in the national space. However, the incentive to register on the Western Cape Evidence Bank is the fact that once you do this, you only need to do it once off and then update this information annually. So it does create and reduce a lot of red tape in the manner that we required as a government. So therefore, in order to do business with the Western Cape government and via the e-procurement system, these two aspects around the databases must be made the supplier must be compliant with. So compulsory registration on the Western Cape Evidence Bank is a policy decision that was taken to house these documents. And I spoke to the WCBD4, but in addition, we housed the BE certificates, the BE affidavits, as well as the 6.1 documents that a supplier would submit in terms of their point scoring system, or in terms of the points that they're claiming within a procurement space. So it is essential to note that you will only be able to receive quotations once this process has been met, because then it becomes easier for us to understand and know that you're not only dealing with compliant suppliers, you're dealing with suppliers that actually fulfill the requirements as it relates to BE, or they have actually then indicated that they have not colluded, and et cetera, in terms of the requirements that are built into the standard bid documents. Then the e-procurement system. The Provincial Treasury is responsible for the implementation and maintenance of the e-procurement system, which provides for the evidence bank and the central documentation. And departments utilize this when they invite quotations up to the value of R1 million, which was a recent up in the threshold by the National Treasury, where previously it was up to 500,000. So it is about then critically looking at how suppliers then engage in this process, and that you're dealing with legitimate suppliers in process. So what are the value and benefits? Why should one actually use this e-procurement system? So for suppliers, it is about providing procurement opportunities to a wider spectrum of suppliers. As we know, in other provinces, as well as the national process, this value of procurement is normally a 3-quote process, whilst in the Western Cape, it is about engaging with suppliers on the e-procurement system to a range of suppliers who are registered for this commodity. So anybody who wants to provide services for a particular commodity will get that quote via the e-procurement system, provided that all their compliance documents are in order. So it's providing opportunities to a wider spectrum of suppliers. It is about stimulating competition. So you're dealing with more suppliers within a value system that normally deals with 3. It's about automating manual processes, streamlining of procurement processes, and ensuring the ease of doing business, but also affording better transparency and accountability. So everybody gets to see who gets the work, how then do you arrive at your decision making to support the tender that you've actually awarded. For departments, it's about easier compliance with legislation. It's about improved productivity. It's about reducing paperwork and telephone and fax costs. It is about working with the latest and verified suppliers and information being held centrally. It ensures fairness and transparency and curbs opportunities for irregularities. So you have a platform where you can curb fraud and corruption between suppliers as well and officials, because the evidence is there for you to actually tap into. And decision making can be recorded in a central space that even as a Treasury, we can go in and exercise our oversight in a more optimal manner. And then it provides for accurate management of information and an audit trail of all transactions. So how do we do what we do? There are basic service rules within how we operate as a client center. One is about training our staff. Number 2 is don't make any promises that we cannot keep. It's a simple rule that I think many public sector institutions uses when they have client center operations. But for us, it is about not being able to make empty promises. It is about always being helpful and meeting the barter pele principles. It's about addressing their complaints and providing redress. It's about answering your telephone. Now, sometimes this has not always been done in the manner that it has, because our telephony is problematic and you don't always hear the calls. We've now managed to resolve that issue with CEI, so all our calls should be answered when we receive them at the client center. It's about our ability to listen, and it's about our ability to throw something extra, and this is not an additional tender. It's about being able to give them some kind of assistance. And if they came in with one thing, and if you hear that, they're struggling with something else or contacting another department, giving them that little bit of information that, they're going out with a little bit more than they came in for. And it's about taking the extra step. So just a brief reflection of the 2021-22 financial year. We have at least dealt with, via the client center, plus minus 13,000 supplier attendances at the PCC, and these range from various aspects. So there's about 5,747 supplier registrations on the Western Cape Evidence Bank in that year, which means at least 5,747 suppliers expressing their intent to do business with the Western Cape government in the 2021-22 financial year. And then it is about the second aspect, about 1,244 EPS queries and IPS support. So we've transitioned, I think, from a previous system that we were outsourcing into an in-house e-procurement system. And so that's a split between the two over the last financial year in terms of queries that we've issued. So on the national registration central supply database, we actually dealt with 1,221 suppliers who wanted support in that regard. And then 1,307 CSD and SEB other queries. So this would not necessarily be registration. It's about things that they may be finding problems with. Why do you want a certified document? Why do you need a commissioner's stamp? Anything that relates to an issue of governance that would come via the supplier community. And then walk-ins over the year, despite COVID-19, we attended to 3,586 walk-ins in the previous financial year. So yeah, that is the end of my presentation, and I think the performance was the final step in what we do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the department for the presentation. We'll now move over to questions. There are members online, but I just wanted to see if there are any questions in the House. One in the House, any online? I recognize Member Nkontlo.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation from the introduction from the HOD and the colleagues in the department. An interesting presentation or conversation about the Procurement Client Center. I must say, I just have a couple of issues, Chair. I think on slide 4 in my copy that I'm sitting with, I think it's slide 8, in what I see here. I just want to check in the strategy of that is actually assisted by the client center. My question was, how is this assisting to balance the notion of red tape reduction? And I think on both sides, one from the government side, as part of an objective that has been declared, particularly by Treasury and Economic Development, that how is this assisting, government to lessen paper, and processes of procurement between the department together with their outside suppliers, but also from the supplier themselves. I would be interested whether is there a mechanism that through the department or any have got engagement with the suppliers so that also we can have their voice in terms of the claims that would make about how this system assists or is not assisting them. So I'm interested in that. Actually, I would have asked a question, I think, in one of the slides to actually check what is the cost of compliance. Is there any, at this point, can this system be able to help us to determine, on average, from your lowest sort of contract value to the highest of what becomes the cost of compliance for the various suppliers in the system. So I'm very much interested on this notion of red tape, because sometimes as we introduce things that are supposedly to be assisting, we end up actually doing the opposite, introducing new papers, new processes. Go to the center, one is going to be able to see that live. And then the other issue, Chair, I'm interested in is that, again, in the strategy, if you talk about capacitation and development, responsive suppliers and all of that, at what point, or is it something that the department is able to provide us, the extent to which through this procurement system, we can be able to pick up new entrants in the system? And I'm saying new entrants, I would assume, is people that are not repeats in the system, but also new businesses, because I'm assuming that the system is able to tell, a new business versus, because remember, part of the interest is to see the growth, and that growth is also quantitative in terms of the number of businesses that are actually doing business with government. And my last one on this one, Chair, would be, if you look at the other element of the strategy about the suppliers who deliver at the right time, at the right place, I'm assuming that the database is able to give us who are these suppliers. If I were to ask from the number that Ms. Juliana has given us that has actually registered at this point, if I were to ask what are the BE credentials of these businesses, how many youth-owned businesses, where are these businesses located? Will the system be able to produce that information? I'm interested to know so that at least we can also be able to see the inclusive nature of our procurement spend. Let me stop there for now, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member. I do see another hand in the House before I move over to the questions online. Colleagues, if I can just ask that we keep our questions a bit briefer because we still have to make time to travel. So I recognize you.
No, thank you very much for the presentation that we received from Treasury. It's a very refreshing presentation. While we are busy connected with our chairperson, she said, this is a good presentation. We should acknowledge it as such. And then the questions that we are just having, I think they are just a few. As you said, I should keep them short. Some of the questions have been addressed by the honourable member. While noting some of these quick wins, such as the number of registrations since the launch and the queries resolved, one wanted to check what potential opportunities have been unlocked by the PCC since its launch. And then the other issue, I have noted that there are risk factors that have been noted within one of the slides. I'm interested mainly on two of them, which is the buy-in and regulatory environment, which I think they are central to the PCC. So I just wanted to check how are they mitigating such? Because if those are not mitigated, they may know, at the end of the day, hamper the purpose of the PCC. And then the other one talks about the issue of efficiency, which I think honourable member as well touched on, the efficiency of the PCC, especially related to the handling of complaints. Since the PCC has been introduced, how efficient in terms of handling complaints, and what are some of the common complaints that the PCC handles on a regular basis, and what's the turnaround times in terms of handling those complaints? This is also related to some of the queries that are actually raised by the Public Service Commission in terms of non-payment of suppliers. To say non-payment and related as well, such as delays, to say how does the PCC actually assist in resolving issues such as non-payment, if it does, so that we can be able to ensure that suppliers are paid on time. So I won't be asking more than that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I recognize Member Hassan online.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and to our colleagues. I thought I'm covered by some of our team that has put forward those questions, but I really just wanted to also thank the Western Cape Provincial Treasury as well as yourselves for allowing this meeting to be hybrid. Members, I know we've just reached the Gauteng legislature in and out, but we really appreciate it. And I just wanted to note our presence and note that we are participating, and also that we are really very much appreciative. And I've sent in my questions to my team, and I think they've already posed them. So I really just wanted to say thank you and acknowledge, and also wish to the delegation for the rest of the afternoon and the visit. I wish I could have joined via video call, but I think that one's going to be a bit more difficult. But thank you to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member. We understand that these are exceptional times, but we really do appreciate you making the effort to join us nonetheless online. I recognize Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got one question. The rest I'll ask when I get to the center. What is the communication, or does the communications protocol around delayed payments sit with our guys here, or does it sit with the departments? Payment is delayed for whatever reason, documents not acceptable, a document outstanding, or there's a problem in the system. Does the responsibility lies with the client department, say for example, Transport and Public Works, to tell the supplier this payment is delayed, or does that responsibility lies with Treasury? Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Before I hand over to the department, I just have two questions myself. The first is, what efforts are there, if any, to share best practice with the private sector and to adopt best practice that they might have? And then secondly, what sort of ICT infrastructure are you using to ensure that your dealings with businesses are done in an accountable and transparent measure? Are you looking at any new infrastructure or any new ICT methods to better bolster this? Thank you, and I hand over to the department.
Thank you very much, members and chairperson. Some very, very interesting questions. I will hand over to the team for some of them, and I think that we can provide further details in the course of the actual visit to the facility, the more kind of nuance of the texture of the questions. I think on red tape, let me start with red tape reduction. I think that I mean, we'd very much share the members' concern about the effects of red tape reduction, particularly for small businesses who have to then bear quite a cost of actually entering and then continuing to participate in public supply chains. The challenge that we face here is that we can't, as the Provincial Treasury, remove all of the red tape. Some of it's regulated, quite a bit of it, in fact, most of it is regulated at national level. What we can do is make sure that we make it easy to navigate and avoid duplicating effort across multiple transactions. So the Supplier Evidence Bank basically builds around the CSD, the Central Supplier Database, and allows a single file, a single portfolio of key compliance documentation to be held online for every supplier. It has to be achieved to participate. A supplier has to do that to participate in our system, in any public procurement system across the country. What this system does is allows you to have a sort of folder available that you can keep online, and it helps you keep updated. It's kept online, and so it helps you keep it updated. And every time you want to participate in a transaction thereafter, you are able to just simply link to that. So we don't remove the compliance burden, we don't remove the red tape burden because we can't, but we make it easy once you've filled that out to continue to participate. And that's a significant, I think, efficiency, particularly for smaller suppliers who just don't have a back office that is doing all of this stuff the whole time, and that is fully digital. I think alongside that for red tape reduction, a lot of it is often around the understanding of a supplier, particularly a small supplier, of how do I fit these pieces together to be able to make sure that I'm compliant with minimum mandatory requirements. That's where our capacitation work comes in. So as Nadia was mentioning, there's a help desk, there's a call-in, there's a walk-in. There are those one-to-ones which work for some people, but the other people want to look on a website. Other people want to look at what questions other people have asked, frequently asked questions. Other people want to watch a video. And we're now providing all of that in a very integrated way. So that's the capacitation side of it, is enabling people to navigate when they have questions. I don't know what they mean by this document that they want. Well, we can explain to you exactly what they mean, and then we can add something and say, if you put this onto the Western Cape Supplier Evidence Bank, this question need never haunt you again. All you will do is link to your profile that is established there. And then the other thing that we do from the Procurement Client Center is that it's not just come to us. We also have supplier development outreaches. So our most recent one, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was in Khayelitsha, with the Department of Health, looking at how we can help small suppliers in township businesses in Khayelitsha participate better in our health supply chains. It's a big part of our supply chain, obviously, as a province. And you can meet the team who did that outreach program when we go to the center itself. So it's a mix of trying to provide capacity support plus one-stop digital folders that make it easier to focus on actually what government is trying to purchase, and make that purchasing process happen smoothly. It doesn't eliminate the full cost of compliance. Unfortunately, there's a regulatory web that is beyond our control. But what we can do is make it much easier, much more non-repetitive, much more once-off to suppliers who are participating in our supply chain. The question you asked, Member Nkondlo, on the cost of compliance is a very, very interesting one, because I don't think that those studies have been done. In the way that we've set up public procurement in the country, what is that additional cost that we're adding for the purchase of a pencil or a school to do it through public procurement systems? And the way to do that is obviously to try and benchmark that against market prices. That is the direction we're absolutely heading in terms of strategic sourcing, that other element of our supply chain, but of our supply chain strategy, but we're not there yet. We would love to be there yet to establish proper benchmarking. It would allow us to look at what that additional cost, that additional premium that we hear, we see quite often in government, that we're getting. But it's a complicated process technically. You've got to compare like with like, and you've got to compare scale with scale. It's not just looking at what's on Take-A-Lot and saying, oh, look, they bought 100 pencils on Take-A-Lot. That's not necessarily telling you anything. It's a little bit more complicated than that. In terms of the question on the new entrant rate, I think that's a terrific metric. I'll ask the team to speak to that question of how many new entrants, what's our rate of new entrants? We should be able to measure that. I don't have the data to hand, but I think it's a terrific metric to look at. In terms of who the suppliers are, we do look at that very closely. And that's what we're now publishing, Member Nkondlo, in our quarterly procurement disclosure reports. What are some of the outcomes of so we do have that data. Part of what the system does is allow us to analyze that data, not just who's registered, but what was their participation rate like. Whether it's across all categories of businesses, women-owned businesses, black-owned businesses, small businesses of varying sizes. We're very interested in that. It's around creating effective competition in our supply chain. And so we're now publishing that data on a quarterly basis. And we're doing that across departments, across the departments, and with a lot of capacity to drill down. And that's a lot of the benefit of the approach, this integrated strategy that we've adopted, and the digital basis of that strategy. In terms of the opportunities unlocked, I think question you asked, obviously we are purchasing in areas where we have functional mandates. We're purchasing in. We're not buying water infrastructure. We're interested in education infrastructure or education consumables and so forth. How we structure our interface with the market in buying a cloth mask or buying a pencil is something that really is in the domain of the procuring entities, which is the Department of Education or Health or whoever. That is where we feel there is quite considerable scope to unlock further opportunities. A good example of that is what we've done with transversal contracting in our securing of government facilities, what we call our transversal security services contract, where we've tried to create more opportunities for smaller firms to participate in providing security services. But it's really through our strategic sourcing, a kind of commodity-based lens and strategic sourcing approaches in particular commodities that we're hoping to continue to unlock opportunities. That's not what the Procurement's Client Center itself is doing. We're doing that in other parts of the work that we're doing as Treasury. But they're in a different part of this strategy. But there's interesting work going on there. It's difficult. We try to be evidence-led in terms of where the opportunities are, and obviously our data integration platforms to allow us to be evidence-led, so that we focus on pencils, not water bottles, is really, really important. And as well as our ability to understand the dynamics of the markets that we're interfacing with. I think your question, sir, was on regulatory risk, on the mitigating regulatory risks. It's a volatile regulatory environment at the moment in public procurement. I think it has put more pressure on our client center to provide confidence and certainty to our suppliers that the show goes on. We did not, in the Western Cape, freeze our public procurement system after the Constitutional Court judgment. We put in place mitigating framework that was approved by the executive so that the show could go on. We did that early, and we led that from the Treasury. But again, I think the role of the PCC in this regard was primarily to project confidence that we have the situation under control, as we did, and that we weren't going to be suddenly seizing up our supply chains, which would have serious consequences for our suppliers, and particularly small suppliers who would be most vulnerable on that. And the question of the efficiency in dealing with complaints, I'll leave that to my team. I think it's another data point that is tracked. What are our turnaround times on queries that come in? I must say, just anecdotally, one query that recently came directly to me, because sometimes people don't know there's a procurement client center, but they can Google and find out that here's my email address as the head of the Treasury, and they come to me with a contract. I, of course, just pass it on, and it was resolved overnight. So some of it's quite quick, but maybe that was because I'd asked for the hand to be extended to the supplier in that regard. We don't in the Western Cape have a problem with our payment rates on that question. The vast majority of payments by the province are executed within 30 days. A lot of departments are pushing themselves towards 15 days. We really don't have problems, unless, of course, we're contesting a payment, in which case, the metric doesn't apply. It may not be a legitimate payment and so forth. But we really don't have a 30-day payment problem of any significance. Those systems are well entrenched for us. And the reason we put a lot of emphasis on that is precisely because it affects our suppliers. It's not a way you partner. You're a reliable partner to a supplier, and it's a great way to pay after 90 days is a great way to kill a small business, and that's not the game we're in. That's not the kind of partnerships we create. In fact, I know our health department. I know even in the Treasury, we measure how close we can get to 15 days. Because we know when you're a small business that this stuff matters. The actual responsibility in that respect, again, is not a PCC issue per se. It is it's a department as the accounting authority. We obviously, as the Treasury, monitor those. We monitor performance across the system, and if there are systemic problems that are emerging, we'd step in. But it wouldn't necessarily. We might pick up a complaint through the procurement client center, but it would be referred. The Chair, then you'd asked questions on sharing of best practice with the private sector and the infrastructure platform that we're building. Let me give my team the opportunity to come back on those two issues. There are some great initiatives underway, both I think globally as well, with some global institutions in sharing practices. But I'll leave that to the team, and they can talk in detail around the infrastructure being used. And then I think, just so the team notes, in terms of some of those metrics on new entrant rates and there was one other data point that I'd mentioned earlier that I don't see now. But let me hand over to Jalinda, Nadia, and the team.
Thank you, HOD. You have indeed covered all the questions. Maybe just to go back, I think Member Mackenzie asked around, do we pay or does the payment lie with the client, with the department, sorry. So the contract management part is with the departments. We would get a complaint should the supplier feel that it's necessary to escalate it if there should be an issue with payment. And then we although it's received by the client center, there's a whole team, a governance team that's behind that as well. So then it gets passed on, and we then ensure from a governance and an accounting perspective that we do then engage with the department to ensure that if there's legitimate issues in terms of why the supplier is not being paid. And if not, then we would try and get the issue resolved as soon as possible. And we're simply not doing it just because it's this, in some instances, it is the head of the department asking, but it is part of our charter. Then just in terms of the best practices, unfortunately, we missed some of the questions of myself and Nadia sort of huddled here around one PC because of the load shedding. We are obviously best practices, I think for us primarily with other government institutions and governments. Currently we do have a relationship with the World Bank in terms of us accessing actually what happens across the globe within the space, and how then can we leverage off those to improve the offering that we are having or giving to our suppliers here in the Western Cape. Nadia, anything to add?
Perhaps just also to speak to the PDRA process. So via the office of our DG, we are looking at a problem-driven iterative adaptation methodology in looking at procurement, any procurement that hampers service delivery. And so it's a cross-functional team. So whilst the Treasury as an oversight body looks at this, this is a team that's put together with various CFOs, SCM heads, and other practitioners that come together in the finance space and then look at how to improve procurement in the province. I think the key lessons from this is about engaging different communities, as well as the business sector, suppliers, as well as the chambers, in terms of looking at how do we improve and continuously evolve in the space, and that so that we at the end of the day get the very interesting and exciting space that we're venturing into, with a lot of solutioning and positive comments coming through from suppliers and business community. I think we haven't as yet looked at engaging the public, the very lay public who receive the services as yet. But we have been engaging more the formal sector and suppliers that do business with us at this stage. So it's work in progress.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. So we are not going to take a further round of questions as we are a bit tight for time. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has joined us today. We'll now make our way through to the PCC in Century City. And that brings today's portion of the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Chair, can I just check that everyone, and particularly our guests, have directions to Century City and the centre?
Tahida will communicate with anyone who hasn't yet received the directions.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just hate anyone to get out-of-town visitors to get lost, but we can sort that out.
Thank you. All right. See you all at the next venue.